In the words of Nipsey Hussle, brothers feeling lucky, we should go to Vegas. Devils went to Vegas, and I went with them. Unfortunately, they weren't so lucky, coming out on the losing end 3-1 to the reigning Stanley Cup champions. What went wrong? And also, is it time to be concerned about the Devils' big three in Hischier, Bratt, and Hughes? We have a lot to discuss in today's episode of Locked On Devils from T-Mobile Arena. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member Trey Matthews, coming to you from the press box here at T-Mobile Arena. I am in Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City, and unfortunately, the slot machine was empty for the New Jersey Devils as they came out on the losing end against the Vegas Golden Knights by a score of 3-1. They are now on a 2-game losing skid, and the well is running dry. I believe the Devils can only lose 2 more games if they really want to keep their playoff chances alive, but I think we know that the writing is already on the wall. I don't think the Devils make the playoffs with how inconsistent they have been. In today's episode, I will share some of my main takeaways from the game. Then in the second segment, we'll hear from Jake Allen, Nico Hischier, and also interim head coach Travis Green. I asked Green to give his assessment of his star players, particularly Nico Hischier, even though he did score in this game, Jesper, Bratt, and Jack Hughes, because I think it's been evident that some people are a little concerned with the recent play from the star players from the Devils, and I have my thoughts on the matter as well. And then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game recap, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. Let's talk about the strategy going into this matchup. If you guys missed the last episode, I was in Tempe, Arizona. I was at Mullet Arena, had the chance to speak with Curtis Lazar and Travis Green. Basically, the strategy for the Devils moving forward was to play with a sense of urgency and also help out their goaltending. Well, one of those 2 goals did come into fruition. Unfortunately, the Devils left their netminder out to dry yet again. Let's begin with period number 1. Within the first 90 seconds of the game, Dawson Mercer cleaned up the mess in front and scored the supposed first goal of the matchup. However, the play was reviewed to see if the puck was kicked in. It was determined that it was not, and then Vegas challenged, thinking that Timo Meier ran into Logan Thompson, which I guess by the rule book he did, but people obviously have their differences of opinion because it did seem like that he was tripped up and he had nowhere else to go, but it was deemed goalie interference and the challenge was successful from Vegas. And then the Devils go on the power play due to Jonathan Marchessault getting an interference call on Dawson Mercer. Devils power play continues to be horrendous, and it's like really bad. Like, it's worse than what it was against the Coyotes. Like, Travis Green said that they were going to try to work on it, maybe change a few things. Well, whatever they tried to change, whatever they tried to work on within the last few hours or so, hasn't worked. It looked 10 times worse. Devils were getting smothered. They couldn't set up shop in their offensive end. And in both of their power play opportunities, they gave the Golden Knights some golden chances to get a shorthanded goal. And I just had to get that off my chest. And there are a few other plays, in particular, Nico Hischier did set up Jesper Bratt on a good look, but couldn't convert. Jake Allen, he was the hero in this game. If the Devils had won this game, he definitely would have been one of my 3 stars in the game. In fact, he would have been my first star because the shots on goal differential after the first period was 14-7 in favor of Vegas. And the thing is that the Devils cannot keep leaving their goalies out to dry. And Curtis Lazar and Travis Green were talking about it in the previous matchup against the Coyotes, but it was more or less the same, which is you finally get a good, valiant effort from your netminder, because I think we can all agree that this loss is not on Jake Allen. He put up one hell of a fight, and at the conclusion of the first period, he stopped 0.98 goals above expected. And the finish to that period was not good for the Devils, but I will give them credit. They did come out with a better sense of urgency. Obviously, it didn't result in a goal, but you still saw that the Devils were definitely playing a lot harder especially against the reigning Stanley Cup champion Golden Knights in their barn. So did the Devils get off to a good start? Absolutely. But unfortunately, that finish to the first period, not really all that pretty, especially that since they left Jake Allen out to dry more times than not. Then in the second period, power play again, and it was evident that the Golden Knights were not afraid to assert themselves on Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, because Jack got maneuvered off the puck at one point, and Nico Hischier, he got leveled at one point as well during the power play. And I think a little bit of this loss is due to bad puck luck, and this is something that Jake Allen talked about in his post-game press conference, and Eric Holla had a chance and went off the crossbar. But while I'm still on the subject of how Jake Allen really carried the team on his back, can we just talk about how great his stick work is? Because he was breaking up passes, he was negating any open opportunities that Vegas might have created. And I was actually talking to Chico Resch about this in between intermissions, and something that Chico added on to my sentiment was that you just saw a better flow from Jake Allen, and he sort of compared it to like calling a game or being a broadcaster, which is he's not robotic. He's flowing really well with the game, and I think Jake needs a lot of credit as to how good his stick work was in this matchup, because this should have been a blowout. And I'll talk more about this in the second segment, but Jake Allen to the rescue. And in the third period, this is where all the scoring took place, and the Devils lit the lamp first. And I thought this was going to be a good chance for them to pull away with an upset victory, because we've seen them do this throughout the course of the year. Usually they do better in marquee matchups, but Nico Hischier, he gave the Devils the lead after a few point-blank attempts from the Devils in front of Thompson, but it was short-lived, because as a true testament to the Devils season, they score first, but it did not last long. William Carrier immediately answered back, and it was back to square one, and the Devils couldn't make any plays. At one point, Ken Danico, who had the night off alongside with Bill Spaulding, he was in a booth right behind me, and I'm obviously on the press row, so I could still see and hear him. And at one point, he was yelling at Jack Hughes, "Come on, Jack, make a play, kid." And Jack was in the attacking end. He was trying to set up shop, and it seemed like the Vegas Golden Knights stopped them in his tracks. And then not too long afterwards, Jack did, in fact, make a play. Unfortunately, it was Eichel who scored the game-winning goal, and it slid underneath Allen. Once again, not on Allen, because the Devils just let Eichel waltz right into the attacking end, and he got a good look, and it was a great shot from one of the alternate captains for this Golden Knights team. Basically another example in which when one thing goes wrong, it seems like a few other things follow suit, because it was 2-1 in favor of the Golden Knights. Devils tried everything they could potentially do, but you just knew that they weren't going to tie the game. They just did not have enough offensive firepower. And when you know that you don't have enough offensive firepower, you really got to play lockdown defense to try to pull away with the upset victory. Unfortunately, they let the Golden Knights answer in no time flat. And then when Jack Eichel got that game-winning goal, and I can't believe I'm saying this because they were only down by a goal, but it was going to take some sort of miracle, because it just seemed like the Devils were very unlucky with puck luck. It seems like they weren't really attacking the best way they could. And this is something I talked about in the previous episode, which is when you are given good opportunities, you got to convert on them, because you don't know how many more opportunities you're going to get. At the end of the day, it just wasn't meant to be. But this is where losing to the Arizona Coyotes, not once, but twice, Blue Jackets, Montreal Canadiens, Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, I can go on for hours. This is where it really hurts you, because if you would have picked up those 2 points against the Coyotes, then this loss, yes, it hurts, but not as much. And now basically you went on this road trip that first began in New York, and you came out on the losing end to the New York Rangers by a score of 3-1. You get a big victory against the Dallas Stars, a team that has shown their own inconsistencies, but let's face it, I think that was still going to be a challenge for the Devils. And then against the Coyotes, you completely fall flat on your face. And against the reigning Stanley Cup champions, you just did not have enough energy to finish the job. And it just goes to show you, this was a very unsuccessful road trip for the Devils, because in those 4 games, they only picked up 2 points. That is unacceptable, and that's not going to get the job done. now they're in a pinch if they really want to shock the NHL world and make the playoffs. Now, we're going to dissect even further as to what went wrong specifically. We're going to talk about the star players. We're going to hear from Nico Hischier, Travis Green, and Jake Allen momentarily. But before we continue, I want to tell you guys about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for the retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as a Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Okay, what went wrong specifically for the Devils? Well, like I said in the first segment, this really should have been a blowout victory for Vegas, because at the conclusion of the second period, I actually put out the deserve to win-o-meter, and I know this is more of James Nichols' bread and butter, but I just couldn't help myself. If you were to look at that meter, 77.6% in favor of the Golden Knights, 22.4% to the Devils. What was the difference maker? It was Jake Allen and his fantastic stick work, and he was keeping his team afloat. Once again, people have been complaining about goaltending, but if you don't have good offense, if you don't have decent defense, this is a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, Jake Allen's valiant effort goes for naught. And remember how I said in segment one that the Devils needed to come away with a sense of urgency, according to Green and also Lazar? Well, Nico Hischier spoke on that a little bit during his post-game media availability. And he talked about players discussing and wanting shorter shifts, but instead getting caught on the ice for longer shifts throughout the course of the game. And according to Mike Moriel, if you combine that with the tough stretch of games lately, he feels like the team was missing energy in the end because, like I said, it seemed like a good start. If you look at particularly with the first period, first 10 minutes, good. The closing 10 minutes, not so good. Here's what Nico Hischier had to say specifically during his media availability, and I'll let you be the judge.
It was a solid effort, but came down, I think, a little bit. Tried to have short shifts. I think sometimes we got a little caught out there, and the tough schedule we have right now, it's a little the energy that was missing at the end, I think. But we'll fly back, have a good day off tomorrow, and then we'll bounce back.
I feel like there's two sides to the same story, which is, yes, I get the fatigue factor, especially this is the second half of back-to-back, and that has been one of the biggest Achilles heels for the Devils this season, which is it seems like for most of their back-to-back games, they just split it. I think they've only won one back-to-back series, and that was back in February. Anyway, digressing a little bit, but the Devils are also talking about how you have to dig deep. And you have to try to play for one another. You got to come out with that energy. Here's the thing. Like, if you feel like you've given it everything you can give, you got to give a little bit more. And I understand that these players are human and I can't take that away from them, but you got to really rely on your star players in this case. And the Devils are kind of in a fix. Like, if you were to look at that fourth line today, as the game waned on, you could obviously see they did not deserve to play for an extended period of time. And the advanced analytics show it. Curtis McDermott, Tomas Nosek, Chris Tierney. That's not going to get it done against the reigning Stanley Cup champions, especially with how they were peppering Jake Allen and really making him break a sweat out there. So I understand that athletes are humans. They're not Superman. They're not like aliens from another planet. These are human beings. But at the same time, it's just like you talk about digging deep. You talk about having to play for one another. That's one of the sacrifices you're going to have to make. And unfortunately, the Devils, they don't have the same depth as they did last season. And they've lost a few key players for more reasons than not. But at the same time, you got to dig deep in those cases. And that's my main takeaway from it. And yes, the energy was lacking towards the end, which is why the Golden Knights won 3-1. And ultimately, they got the empty netter goal to solidify it. But I really want to talk about Jake Allen and give him his roses for the valiant effort he put in. And I know I talked about it in the first segment of today's show, but I want to play his soundbite from his media availability and share his thoughts on the matter.
See, frustrating the outcome, but how do you assess your play in the game overall? Obviously made some crazy big saves there.
Yeah, we were right there till the end. That was a great hockey game. 2-1 game. It was a great game. It was entertaining. We played hard. They're a good hockey team. They're a good team at home, and especially in this barn. And they have a really good record over the years. And I thought we had to. It was a hard-fought battle. We were right there to the end. Maybe one bounce, goes our way. It's a totally different game, and obviously we had the goal called back. But I think we had to take a lot of positives of this game and regroup. And we had a couple game homestand here that be important for us.
You think it was just puck luck? I mean, one shot goes off a guy's arm and in, another shot's deflected and goes in.
That's hockey. A lot of times it's going to go your way. A lot of times it's not. But you got to work for those. I think we get back to the drawing board on Tuesday, get our work boots on, and see what we can do.
I like how he said that it was just basically unlucky bounces for the Devils. He described what went wrong, but I think in his heart to heart, he knows that he's not the culprit for this loss. And I know one of the scapegoats this season for the Devils has been their goaltending, and sometimes it's been justified. Other times, like in this case, it's not so justified. And I think for Jake Allen, he's definitely, trying to stick up for his team. But in this case, there's really nothing more than he can do because he did everything you could ask from a goalie and more. Unfortunately, the offense in front of him, not all that good. And the defense, it's just like they leave holes in their execution. There's no defensive depth. And John Marino did come back in this game, which is good because he's been out with an injury. But the thing is like the Devils need even more depth. And I was talking to Chico about this during the intermission, losing Ryan Graves and Damon Severson. They lost those players because they couldn't afford them in free agency. I can't reiterate that enough. Not because Fitzy didn't want them, just putting that out there. But anyway, losing those types of players really hurt the Devils because what they did sometimes didn't show up on the score sheet, but you knew when looking at the advanced analytics, just passing the eye test, they were really valuable out there. And I think that's what's sort of been missing from the Devils. And I think this game is a good indicator. And a lot of people have concerns for Nico Hischier, despite him scoring in this game, Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, for more reasons than one. I'm seeing stuff on social media saying that Nico Hischier, he's not really a good leader. There was a video about him putting his head down during the Coyotes game. Or Jack Hughes, is he playing hurt? Is he actually healthy? And then for Jesper Bratt, sort of him going on a cold streak. I had the chance to ask Travis Green his thoughts on his star players, and here's what he had to say.
What's your assessment on how your star players have been playing recently, particularly Nico? I know he scored in this game, Jesper, and also Jack.
I thought they were pretty good today. But they're all right.
He was pretty short and simple and to the point about it, thinking that they all played relatively well. Well, here's the thing. He is right to an extent because Nico Hischier did score in this game. Jesper Bratt, he did have a few opportunities. He just couldn't convert on them. And for Jack Hughes, I was asking a few people, like, is he actually healthy? And the response I got was when Lindy Ruff was the head coach at the time, Lindy said, not really. And then Jack Hughes said, yeah, I'm good to go because Jack is not going to make any excuses. And the thing is that Jack Hughes' worst is still better than a lot of people's best. I know he hasn't been the best, and I talk about him getting out-muscled, and basically he's not really doing the dirty work. Like, he's not as aggressive as he was last year. He's not doing face-offs, and it seems like he's trying to be extra cautious because he has dealt with 2 injuries that have kept him out for a significant amount of time. And I think in this case, it's better to proceed with caution. Does he need surgery? I don't really know. I don't want to speculate on something that I don't have enough information on. But let's just say hypothetically he does need surgery. Then if the Devils, if their playoff chances hit 0%, I think there's no harm in shutting him down for the rest of the season. But that's when the playoff chances go 0%, and that's if he's actually dealing with that sort of injury. That's just pure speculation on my end. But I want people to know that Jack Hughes, his worst is still better than most people's best. And I think a lot of teams would give an arm and a leg to have his services. So when I'm seeing like on YouTube or social media saying that he's overrated, he's this, he's that. I think people are just taking it out of context in more ways than one. And speaking of taking things out of context, yeah, Nico Hischier put his head down at one point, but I think every player has done that at some point. Haven't you ever been frustrated? I think Nico is a very good captain. Otherwise, I don't think the team would name him captain. So I'm a little baffled by that discussion. I'm not even going to talk about that one. But for Jesper Bratt, I understand that the well has sort of run dry for Jesper, but he's been one of the more consistent pieces for Devils this season. It was bound to happen. Every player goes through a cold spell for more reasons than one, and some players' cold streak is different compared to some other players. Like a cold streak for someone like Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid, maybe they're getting the assists, but not the goals. Or and for Jesper, it's just like he's not really scoring like he once did. But I'm just like, he's been one of the more consistent assets for the Devils. And I think in this game, was it a good showing from like Jack Hughes? Not really. It wasn't his best performance. In fact, I don't think the last few games have been his best performance, but I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about. I think he'll bounce back better next year because he's dealt with 2 injuries that's kept him out for a significant amount of time. For Jesper Bratt, bound to happen. He's been one of the more consistent assets. For Nico Hischier, I don't know why we have this debate on social media. He's a great captain, and that's just what I'm going to say. Now, I'm going to compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Always remember to gamble responsibly. And it's kind of fitting that I'm doing a FanDuel live read in Sin City, Las Vegas, the capital, the mecca of sports betting. I might have to do some while I'm here for the next few hours, but I got a plane to catch at the time of this recording. Okay, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and check out from T-Mobile Arena. Shots on goal differential, 37-21 in favor of the Golden Knights. Oh, fun fact for you guys, for any of you who are big into the lottery or what have you, if you were to look at the shots per period, first period, second period, and third period, the Devils had 7 shots in total for all 3 of those periods. So I guess like 3 sevens in a row, that means you win some money at like a lottery ticket or something like that. I just thought that was pretty funny and somewhat coincidental because we are in Vegas. Face-off percentage, 51.9% to the Devils, 48.1% to the Golden Knights. Power play, Devils were 0 for 2, looked horrendous on it, but the Golden Knights were 0 for 2 on their power play as well. Hits 21-10 in favor of the Golden Knights. Blocked shots 21-12 in favor of the Golden Knights. At one point during his soundbite, and I was actually talking to Sam Kassan about this, Nico Hischier mentioned the perimeter shots that the Devils continue to take. Not a recipe if you want to win, because if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The defense can read that easily, and it's not going to end well for you, especially if they're getting all those blocked shots. Devils have got to find a way to penetrate on in, and I know it's been a struggle for Jack. He's not really doing the same razzle-dazzle he once did, but you got to work with what you're being given. Giveaways, Golden Knights led that department 7-3. Takeaways, 15-7 in favor of Vegas as well. If I had to give the Devils a letter grade, I'm going to give him a few extra points just because Jake Allen was phenomenal in this game. I'll give him a solid D. I wanted to give him an F, but Jake Allen and the performance he put up in net, he doesn't deserve that. And where do the Devils go from here? Well, playoff chances looking slimmer, and slimmer. Tough schedule ahead. They got to play the Rangers one more time. They got to play the Maple Leafs three times. They haven't played them at all this year. The point is, very tough schedule for the Devils, and I think they can only afford to lose 2 more matchups. I don't see it happening, and I think this season is just pretty much a wash, and you're going to have to go back to the drawing board during the offseason to see what you truly need. And it's just disappointing. I know people want to hold on to hope, but sometimes you just got to accept reality. The only thing that's consistent about this Devils team is their inconsistency. And that's the truth, and that's what we're just gonna have to deal with. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. What did you think of the overall performance from the Devils? What do you think about their big three, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Jesper Bratt? Do you think they're taking a couple steps backwards? And if so, what's been your main area of concern? And where do you think the Devils go from here with a tough schedule pending? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Trey Matthews signing out in Las Vegas, Nevada at T-Mobile Arena.